Alright, now we come to the fourth and final Alien movie. At least, that's what they thought at the time. Alien Resurrection. Now, Alien Resurrection came out in 1997 and is the movie that brought back Sigourney Weaver even though she died at the end of Alien 3. Here we have a cloned version of Ripley, so we can have that star power back for one last hurrah in this franchise before it just kind of peters out into obscurity. At least until Ridley Scott comes back and kind of kickstarts this franchise up again. And all the shenanigans with Prometheus is a review for next week. Here I'm just talking about Alien Resurrection, and it's just kind of a nothing movie. I've seen it multiple times and I just watched it again getting ready for this video, and I can already feel myself starting to forget scenes and moments from the movie because it just leaves that little an impact on me. There's really not a lot in this movie that got me invested, it got me to care, or even to justify the return of Sigourney Weaver. Yeah, it's nice to have her back, but she's not really the Ripley from the other movies. They do this very convoluted cloning process where they bring her back because the corporation is super obsessed with finding and studying these xenomorphs, so they clone her, bring her back to life, and somehow during that process they bring her back in the same way she was right before she died. Pregnant with this alien inside of her about to burst out of her chest. Again, if you need more information, go see my review on Alien 3, talk about that. And the reason I wanted to bring her back is not to have Ripley back, is so that they can study that alien inside of her, extract it, have that alien grow into an alien queen, which it does, and then they can populate all these eggs, and they can have a army, I guess, or a colony or something going on with these aliens. They want to breed them and they want to see what they do. And that's really issue number one with this movie. I feel like if this movie were to work on a script level, it really needed to nail down why these scientists on the space station really want or need to study these things, because you have Brad Dourif as one of the head scientists here, and he's just a creep. He's Brad Dourif, so you know he's gonna be a creep and a bit of a weirdo, but here there's no motivation. It just seems like he has this almost fetishistic or cultish obsession with these things, and is just enamored with them, wants to study them just for fun. They never really talk about military capabilities or bioweapon capabilities or any kind of practical military or industrial application for these things. As well, in the previous movies, I didn't really need an explanation as to exactly how they were going to implement these things after they've studied them, because in those movies it was such an anomaly. They really had no idea what they were even working with. It was very mysterious, and it didn't really affect the plot of the movie so much because those movies is just survival, and it was very horror focused. Even Aliens, though I would classify that more as an action movie than a horror movie, it definitely qualifies in the horror department in multiple scenes. It's a pretty intense, suspenseful, and yes, at times even horrific movie, but this movie, I never really got the horror vibe. It just feels like a very high concept sci-fi alien movie, almost like something you get out of Star Trek First Contact, or one of those latter Star Trek movies that we got. Everything's high-tech, so in that setting you would want things to be further explained. You'd want to make sure that the motivations are fleshed out, because the whole reason that anybody, I think, cares about this movie is because it's the one where they brought Ripley back and they were really banking on that star power, so yeah, you kind of have to justify it in a way that makes sense. And it's not like it's that hard to do. All you'd have to say is like, we want this for weapons, this is how we would implement the acid blood or the life cycle or any other feature of this alien into some kind of weapons application. It's really not that complicated, and Joss Whedon, who did write the script for this movie, really dropped the ball here. This is not one of his better scripts. Sure, there's shades of creativity in here, and there's a bit of a familiarity with the alien life cycle and how they work and how you could incorporate it into a movie like this, and it's competent enough, but it's really nothing special and really nothing we haven't seen before already. And that's probably my biggest complaint with this movie, is there's really nothing new in this. It's a lot of recycled concept. You have Ripley, or in this case a version of Ripley, who's kind of naive and kind of out of it, needs things explained to her. She's more or less the audience's POV character. And you have these not Marines, they're these kind of pirate mercenary type people. And aside from Ripley, I'd say these guys are our main characters. They're at least the ones that we follow the majority of the time and are kind of the crew. You know, all these alien movies need a crew that somehow systematically gets picked off over the course of the movie, and it raises the stakes. Well, here we've got Michael Wincott, who is kind of the leader of these guys, and he I'm kind of shocked I haven't really talked about in any of my reviews. At least I don't think so. He's popped up in a few movies that I reviewed so far, like The Count of Monte Cristo, and he just has a great bad guy voice. There's something about him and his delivery. He's so sleazy and just evil looking, mischievous, and he plays bad guys so well that it's kind of a cliche whenever he pops up where you're like, oh yeah, he's just gonna be the bad guy. He's gonna be a complete sadist and enjoy being evil. And while his characters usually aren't the most three-dimensional, they are endlessly entertaining. I love seeing this guy. And here he actually has a chance to not be a one-dimensional villain. For a lot of this movie, he's kind of morally ambiguous. He's got some flaws for sure, but he's also got some values like loyalty. He cares about his crew. So it is cool to see him take on a bit of a different role. You get to see a different side of this guy, and whenever he's on screen, it's always entertaining. And with him, you've got Ron Perlman, who basically plays Ron Perlman. He always plays the same character, more or less. Well, he's not bad here. He does a fine job. It's just kind of the performance that you would expect. And rounding out our group, we have Winona Ryder as a spy, I guess. This is a part of the movie that's handled strangely. Because at the start of this movie, she's no one special. She's just part of the crew. But then she starts snooping in places that she's not supposed to be. She meets Alien Ripley clone, and they start hitting it off, kind of. Their chemistry is really weird, and there's a lot of strange performance choices between the two of them. There's some kind of attraction, but not. And I wouldn't say that's a fault of Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder is also just kind of doing a typical Winona Ryder performance, which doesn't leave much impact at the end of the day. A lot of these performances, aside from Michael Wincott, who I just can't get enough of, a lot of these background performers, a lot of these other characters are just kind of the typical performance that you would expect out of these characters. They don't really elevate the material, but they don't make it worse either. It's just kind of bleh. And that's kind of why my brain just immediately starts forgetting everything from this movie. And before I forget even more, we need to talk about Ripley, because Ripley in this movie is not really Ripley. She is a clone of Ripley who was pregnant with the xenomorph, but something got really confused in the cloning process where now she is kind of a Ripley xenomorph hybrid. I guess the thing they used to bring her back to life is the same thing that created the Brendel fly in The Fly. It just couldn't separate the genetic genome, and it is faulty, so now she has superhuman strength. She has these weird little tics and instincts, and sometimes she just says weird and out-of-pocket things that I guess is chalked up to her naivete, because she's, you know, pretty young given that she's a clone and that her growth was accelerated to the point of maturity, and then she's only been outside of the tube for a short time, so maybe that's why she acts the way she does, but it just doesn't come across right. It doesn't come across as natural for sure. But that being said, I do appreciate what they tried to do with Ripley. They tried to send this character in a different direction. The woman that has been terrified of these things, the woman that's been paranoid about these things, the woman that's been constantly trapped with these things, trying to escape the xenomorphs for 3 movies now, and finally escaped it in death at the end of the 3rd one, is now brought back. And what do you do with this? Well, you just make her completely fine with being a xenomorph. It would have been really interesting if they had had a scene early on where she is freaking out, really trying to come to grips with her natural memories that have been inherited somehow. That's another thing in this movie that doesn't really make sense, how these inherited clone memories trickle down and how she remembers things that she didn't actually experience. But whatever, given that that's a thing that they established in this movie, it would make sense that she would have a real existential crisis about her being genetically spliced with the thing that she despises above all else, and there's nothing she can do about it. Does she even want to live now that this has happened to her? That could have been really interesting, but no, they just make her completely fine with it, and they make her this kind of alpha woman, alien queen in a human body kind of idea, and it just doesn't quite get there for me. I kind of like what they tried to do with that, but again, execution is everything, and it just comes across as really sloppy and just shows that they didn't really have a plan. They were just kind of coming up with ideas left and right, and maybe this could work, maybe this could work. They just put them together and boom, there's our next Alien movie. And I want to make this clear, I don't actually hate this movie. It is kind of a letdown given how interesting and creative the past 3 movies have been, but this is the movie where I really felt like, okay, not only are they running out of ideas, but this is just becoming another franchise, another action blockbuster franchise that is going to be just like all the others that have kind of run their course. And it just doesn't have that gritty, disturbing horror feel to it anymore. There was no point in this movie where I was scared or had the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There was none of that in this movie. Everything here is something you've either seen already in one of the other Alien movies, and it's just kind of becoming redundant at this point. Like seeing an android get revealed, as is the case with Winona Ryder in this movie. Yes, she's secretly an android. Okay, does it go anywhere interesting? Does it change the dynamic between her and Ripley? Because, you know, Ripley used to have a prejudice against the androids, and she kind of built a relationship with this girl, but now she's a robot. Does that matter? No, not really, because by this point Ripley's more focused on what's going on with the alien queen, and maybe she can do something to stop it. And now we come to just the biggest question mark in this movie, the why did you go this direction? And it's in the last third when you see the alien queen, and the alien queen is not exactly the same kind of alien queen that we saw in Aliens. Here it's a little bit more human, or at least the anatomy is a little bit more human. Again, I assume something kind of went awry with the cloning process, that not only did Ripley get a little bit of xenomorph in her, the xenomorph got a little bit of human female Ripley in her. And so now she has like a womb that isn't the same kind of insect-like womb that's just pumping out eggs. No, she's giving a live birth to an alien monstrosity. Again, I just gotta ask, why? What kind of message is this furthering? Is it just because we haven't done it before? When the other movies have added new elements or tried something new or put a spin on something, it was always to further the message of the original Alien, which has always had something to do with sexual reproduction or sexual assault gone awry, gone in a horrifying alien kind of way. And all the previous movies have touched on that in different areas and focused on different aspects of it. Here, all that subtext kind of just goes out the window, aside from just the bare bones of when you see the aliens reproducing. Yeah, there's your metaphor. But the movie itself doesn't expand on it in any interesting way. And when you see this alien queen giving a live birth, it just raises a big question mark where, okay, is this just another sci-fi franchise now? Because it's a new concept, that's what we're going with, even though there's no actual reason, there's no subtext, there's no metaphor for it. Yeah, okay. And then when this thing does give birth, you see, what even is this thing? I don't even know what it's called. I think somewhere it was called the newborn. And yeah, we're just gonna go with that. So she gives birth to the newborn. It's kind of interesting. There's some interesting ideas going on in here. And I kind of wish that this thing was in more of the movie, that maybe this is what the alien queen looked like. It had adapted more of the Ripley thing to make their bond a little tighter. I kind of like how this design, it brings in more of the human elements. This thing has a bit more of a recognizable human face, human skull. But at the same time, it's just so ugly. And the movie doesn't really seem to make up its mind whether or not we should have sympathy for this thing, because Ripley feels a strange kinship with it and doesn't really want to kill it right away. Or are we supposed to be scared by it? Because when it does start cannibalizing the alien queen that gave birth to it, that's a interesting idea, which would have kind of worked if you didn't give this thing sweet, kind puppy dog eyes. Or is it something we're just supposed to be repulsed by it, how unnatural it is? And that's probably the closest to the reaction it gets out of me. It just feels uncanny. It feels like a strange new design, which, like I just said in this video, I want some originality in this movie. And when it does arrive, this is a moment where I do kind of perk up a little bit and I start being a little more invested in here, because okay, we have something I haven't seen before in this franchise. Let's see what they do with it. But again, they don't really do anything with it. It only shows up for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then it gets sucked out of not even an airlock, it just gets sucked out of a glass window that has a little crack in it, and the whole thing just sucks out. And that's kind of a good effect. And I will say the effects in this movie are actually really good. These are by far the best looking xenomorph puppets, animatronics, dudes in suits. We see a lot more of the aliens and kind of their bodies in wide shots. The CGI actually looks pretty good. I think because they used a variety of different effects, it had that Jurassic Park effect where it kind of tricks your brain into not really catching on to which shots are CGI, which shots are practical, because it just switches so often and so fast. This is something this movie has definitely over Alien 3. With Alien 3, I thought the xenomorphs looked actually pretty bad in a lot of shots, if not most shots. The effects in that movie, I don't think quite got there for me, but this movie, yeah, the effects are really solid, pretty convincing. Now, I don't think that makes up for the script issues and the lack of embracing more the horror aspects that made this franchise feel special and the undertones of sexuality gone awry. Those are unfortunately pretty absent in this movie. And aside from a germ of what could have been an interesting idea with the cloning of Ripley, that doesn't really go anywhere in execution, and the evolution of sorts with the alien queen and the newborn, those designs ultimately being something that we haven't seen before, this movie just doesn't leave much of an impression and just feels like kind of a waste and an unfortunately mediocre way to end this franchise on, or at least the Ripley part of this franchise. Like I said, this franchise is still ongoing, and we're going to talk about Prometheus and the reboot of this franchise, and Ridley Scott back in the director's chair to hopefully fix everything or just make everything a lot more complicated. But until then, let me know in the comments, what do you think about Alien Resurrection? Did you enjoy it? Do you think there are more good things about it than I was giving it credit for? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And don't forget to hit that join button to become a member. You get some exclusive perks and early access to my videos. So be sure to do that, and as always, I'm Colby. This is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.